Andrea Yates. Andrea Yates had struggled with mental health problems all her life. As a teenager, she suffered from bulimia and suicidal ideations. And as an adult, she would be diagnosed with depression, delusional thinking, and schizophrenia. Still, she lived a relatively stable, simple, and devoutly religious life with her husband, Russell, and their family in the Houston suburb. But by 2001, Andrea Yates was convinced that she and her children were destined for hell. Andrea, her psychosis fueled by the biblical teachings of a family friend, came to believe the only way to save her children and prevent Satan from returning to Earth was by killing them and being executed for the crime. On the morning of June 20th, 2001, Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children in the family's bathtub. Then, she called 911 and waited for the police to arrive. Then she called her husband and told him to come home. After police arrested Andrea Yates, she told psychiatrist Dr. Philip Resnick that her children would not grow up to be righteous. She believed killing them before they turned sinful had saved them from hell, and that only her execution for killing them would defeat Satan on earth.
Yoselin Ortega. Lucia and Leo Krim, aged 6 and 2 respectively, were murdered in the late afternoon of October 25, 2012, at the La Rochelle apartment building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City. The children's part-time caretaker, Yoselin Ortega, was convicted of stabbing the children to death with kitchen knives while their mother Marina Krim and 3-year-old sister Nessie were a few blocks away at a swimming lesson. Upon returning home, their mother and sister found Lucia and Leo dead in a bathtub at the family apartment. Ortega then began stabbing herself repeatedly in the neck. She survived the self-inflicted wounds. This scene was also witnessed by the apartment building's superintendent and his 10-year-old son. Ortega told police investigators Lucia, who suffered defensive wounds, had fought back when she was attacked. She said 2-year-old Leo was sleeping when the attack started. Ortega claimed she was upset that her employer, Marina Krim, responded to her inquiry about needing more hours due to money troubles by suggesting she could do housework. The NYPD and friends of the nanny said she indicated that she was upset because the Krims would not pay her more money. However, family and friends who knew the Krims, as well as Ortega's own family, said that Ortega was close to the children and was treated very well by the Krims. The Krims paid for her plane tickets to see her family in the Dominican Republic and, on one occasion, accompanied her on vacation there. In November 2012, Ortega was indicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Over the next 5 years, prior to trial, Ortega made approximately 90 court appearances. Ortega was found guilty of first-degree murder and second-degree murder on April 18, 2018. On May 14, 2018, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In his ruling, Judge Caro said Ortega was pure evil, blaming Ortega and her family for not seeking medical treatment for Ortega's depression and anxiety, and for hiding her condition from the Krims.
Megan Huntsman. Darren West began cleaning out the garage at the home he once shared with his wife, Megan Huntsman. Nothing could have prepared him for what he would uncover. Inside a small white box wrapped in plastic was the tiny decaying body of an infant. West immediately called the police. They searched the home and found 6 more dead infants, all in boxes stashed away in the garage. After questioning, Huntsman admitted to killing the infants between 1996 and 2006. She was heavily addicted to meth and alcohol at the time and said she killed them because she couldn't afford to raise them. After giving birth, she would take the newborns in her hands, then press on their necks with her thumbs until they died. Then she would swaddle them in towels or sweaters, wrap them in plastic garbage bags, and pack them into cardboard boxes. She pled guilty to 6 counts of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 6 terms of 5 years to life, 3 to be served consecutively, and 3 to be served concurrently. Michelle Kehoe. Kehoe drove her sons from their Coralville home in the family van October 26, 2008 to a remote pond near Littleton and slashed their throats. Kehoe duct taped eldest son Sean's eyes, nose, and mouth before cutting him and then went after younger son Seth, who was cut twice and died a few minutes later. Sean survived to tell police what his mother did. Sean Kehoe also told investigators it was his mother who had cut him and that he heard his younger brother call out and saw his mom hurting him. Kehoe, who is now 46, is serving life sentence at the state's prison for women at Mitchellville. China Arnold. China Arnold is a woman from Ohio who was convicted of the murder of her 28-day-old baby, Paris, but it is the way the infant was killed which makes people remember this case. According to court documents, China Arnold was living with her boyfriend when an argument broke out over who actually was the father of Paris. China Arnold would react by placing the 28-day-old baby into a microwave and turning it on for at least 2 to 3 minutes. Paris would have no external injuries, however her inner organs were damaged by the high heat causing her death. China Arnold would claim that she was not the one who put Paris into a microwave. However, after 3 trials, she would be convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Arnold, 33, was already tried 3 times, with the death penalty a possibility each time, in the murder of her daughter Paris Taylor. Her first trial in February 2008 ended in a mistrial, and her second trial ended in September 2008 when she was found guilty, but the jury could not decide on the death penalty. Seth Welch and Tatiana Fusaria. Tatiana Fusaria and her ex-husband Seth Welch were both convicted on charges of child abuse and murder in the death of their 10-month-old daughter, Mary. Mary's death was the result of malnutrition and dehydration. Prosecutors alleged that the infant hadn't been fed in days, having gained only a single pound in the 10 months since her birth. During her criminal trial, Fusari testified that she was the victim of abuse at the hands of her husband for years, telling jurors that Welch had held a gun to her head and raped her. Welch called 911 on August 2, 2018, and reported that he found Mary dead in her crib. Video of how Fusari and her husband Seth Welch reacted after they were initially charged has been viewed more than 11 million times. Welch could be seen with mouth agape as he learned that he faced life without parole, while Fusari cried. Kent County Judge Paul sentenced Tatiana Fusari and Seth Welch to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Diane Downs. For years, Diane Downs has had a wonderful life. She was married to her high school sweetheart, worked part-time at a local thrift store, and had 3 children, Christiane, Cheryl Lynn, and Stephen Daniel. But that idyllic image shattered in the early 1980s. In 1980, her husband, Stephen Downs, divorced her after he became convinced that young Danny wasn't his son. Downs tried to become a surrogate, but failed when the psychiatric test indicated signs of psychosis. She found brief solace in a new lover until he left her because of her children. So Downs decided to murder them so she could be with him. On May 19, 1983, Diane Downs pulled over to the side of a rural road in Springfield, Oregon, and shot them multiple times with a .22 caliber pistol. She then fired a round into her own arm before driving to the hospital to claim that a bushy-haired stranger had assaulted her family before a terrifying carjacking. The witness who saw her drive slowly after the shooting only furthered suspicions. She was arrested on February 28, 1984. Diane Downs was convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
Agnes Wong. Agnes Wong was sent to prison for 5 years after she inflicted a string of sadistic punishments on 17-month-old Hugo Wang because he cried for his mother. She scorched the youngster with a hairdryer and eventually killed him when she swung him against a bed by his ankles. Wong, an immigrant from Malaysia, came to Britain in 2003 and found work in a Chinese restaurant in Southport, Lancashire. There she met Hugo's mother, Zhen Wang, an illegal immigrant who asked her to care for her son while she worked to pay off a £20,000 debt to people traffickers. Wong agreed and began child-minding Hugo full-time at her flat near Manchester, with his parents visiting once a week. In their absence, she embarked on a campaign of abuse, hitting him all the time. She beat Hugo so hard with a ruler that it snapped and also bit his hand and arm. During her trial, Wong said, "I did not want to harm him, but at the same time, I wanted him to be good." The extent of the torture only became clear in January when Hugo was admitted to hospital with head injuries. He later died, and a post-mortem examination suggested he had been swung against a bed or a couch. Wong, 28, denied murder but was convicted at Preston Crown Court of manslaughter. Marquita Birch. Marquita Birch was babysitting William Cunningham of Cincinnati on May 22 when he died from a brain injury the next day, according to County Prosecutor Joseph Dieters. Dieters said the 26-year-old did not seek medical treatment for the toddler when she injured him, dumped his body in a garbage bag, hid the boy in her cousin's home, and reported him missing. A Hamilton County grand jury in Cincinnati indicted Birch on single counts of murder and involuntary manslaughter and 2 counts of endangering children. Birch also is charged with tampering with evidence and gross abuse of a corpse. The charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. Birch's attorney did not immediately return calls for comment. Birch initially reported the toddler missing, but was taken in for questioning after police found discrepancies in her story. The woman later recanted her story, telling Covington detectives that Cunningham had fallen down the stairs in her apartment on Sheehan Avenue in Cincinnati. She said she had given him ibuprofen and had found his lifeless body the next morning. The suspect then directed Covington detectives to an apartment on Winton Road where she said she had taken the boy's body. The toddler's corpse was discovered in a hall closet within the unit.
That was it for today's video. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and hit the like button.